may be hard to believe it, but superhero movies are dying. Well, at least I hope they are. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has gone from one of the most celebrated and beloved collections of films ever projected onto eyeballs to something that time and time again disappoints the few left that care and lines the wallets of people who bitch for a living.
MCU sucks.
But before all of this was all anyone ever yelled about in the online movie space, back when the online movie space looked like this instead of this, things were even worse. The year is 2002 and superhero movies are in the shit. Marvel is doing this, nowhere near enough people are watching Darkman, and DC doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. The concept of a connected universe is laughable, and seemingly every attempt to make something memorable and more importantly profitable is falling flat on its face.
Then Spider-Man came out and kicked the shit out of everything.
The film had everything. It had action, it had heart, it had Willem Dafoe, and it paid off. Everyone knows what happens next. The movie rightly made bank and got all of the love in the world. A sequel follows that's so good nobody shuts the fuck up about it for 19 years, and then a third film follows and it's incredibly overhated for an annoying amount of time, even though it's better than almost every Marvel movie made after it, and it features the best film adaptation of Venom. Yeah, that's right, I said it. While on top of all that, having the best scene from any film ever made. While all this was going down, we also happened to be in the golden era of movie licensed games, back when any movie, no matter how questionable, got a hastily slapped together 8 to 10 hour long experience which fucked with the source material so much it's pretty much unrecognizable. And the Spider-Man movies got the bite. Each entry of the Raimi trilogy has a main console video game adaptation. They all make sweeping changes to the plot, add in characters from the comics for the sake of extra content, and somehow manage to wrangle most of the original voice cast, with Tobey tear-flooding Maguire showing off his incredible talent of being one of the funniest voice actors of all time, unintentionally.
Hey, Betty. Looking good.
Thanks, Pete.
No, seriously, I would definitely.
I think Mr. Jameson had a job for you. Why don't you go in and see him?
You're lost, babe.
So to see what differs in these titles, and out of sheer boredom, I tracked down copies of all 3 games. So let's talk about them.
I also have an Xbox copy that doesn't work.
The first game in the trilogy is an interesting one. It's like discovering an old book of medicine filled with stuff that is just so blatantly outdated that it boggles the mind. In the beginning, the story beats are mostly the same as the movie, with the opening chapters being set before Peter dons the actual spider suit. So for the first couple missions, you're the human spider, and that's just neat. It's also funny because in this fun game about being a hero saving the day, you spend the first hour in a murderous rage hell-bent on revenge. But after the altercation with the man that killed Uncle Ben, who has a shotgun now, the game starts to steer away from the original movie's plot dramatically. In this version, after a greasy montage where you become Spider-Man, we cut to Norman Osborn, who exposition dumps that they only have a week to complete the evil Goblin Juice of Doom or else the company will go bankrupt. So he decides that the best course of action is to send a whole pack of robots to kidnap Spider-Man and steal his blood. Then Vulture and Shocker show up. For some reason. Vulture fucks off, but Spidey chases after Shocker, resulting in a whole sequence with hostages in a sewer, and here is where the outdated medicine book thing kicks in. You see, Spider-Man 1 was developed in an era of growing pains. 3D gaming was going through puberty, and it shows now more than ever. The controls, I can only describe as that video of Bart Simpson with a lobotomy. You have full camera control and movement, which is nice, but turning the camera with the right analog stick doesn't affect the movement with the left analog stick like in most third-person games. They're completely separate, meaning if you turn the camera and don't stop moving, this direction is now making you move this way. I have no idea if I described that accurately at all, but what it amounts to is constantly having to rearrange yourself and smacking into walls. I think I've given Peter Parker a lethal amount of concussions 10 times over. In addition to this being during an era of janky on-foot movement, this was also before web-slinging was fully figured out. Unlike pretty much every Spidey game that followed this one, which had the basic skeleton for web-slinging ironed down, this game takes a different approach. A bad one. Basically, holding R2 makes Spidey swing and ascend, attaching his web to the moon, and if the swinging being floaty as fuck and having the rate you race the sky being faster than the Rapture were the only issues, you could make do. But because this is a mission-based linear game and not open world like the other ones, any section out in the city is just swinging from one rooftop to another. And because the objective marker is this useless MS Paint circle, the game has to tell you how high or low down on the map your objective is, meaning they somehow made traveling from one 3D rectangle to another a true test in patience and will. Luckily it's not all bad. As you progress along, you learn some tricks that make traversal far less painful, like this web pull thing that lets you fling across the map, and the combat, for as basic and sluggish as it is starting out, becomes fun, just because of how ridiculous it turns as you learn different combos that make Spidey do some goofy shit. After beating the Shockmeister, Spidey follows the trail of the Vulture, which ends in his hideout, a horribly designed, repetitive tower that spams you with bombs and is all around incredibly frustrating, especially considering how dark it all is, making navigation even more annoying. Now would also be a good time to mention that there are no checkpoints in this game. The way the game handles saves is just as archaic as the spider tank controls. When you boot up the game, you have to manually load your save file, and once you're in a mission, that's it. You better beat the thing in that sitting and not die, or it's all the way back to the beginning of your last save. I swear if I just start right at the beginning. No!
Fuck! I swear to God, I'm gonna fucking pick up my hamster and squeeze the life out of it.
This game sucks. I'm sure when it was released, it was an interesting little oddity, but today it's just everything people want to forget about game design and controls. The only saving graces are the voice acting, which is fun to laugh at, and the combat. But even that gets ruined after defeating Vulture, because we're introduced to the Scorpion, who is also being chased by Oscorp's robots for having mutated DNA, although his origin is never explained in the context of this game, so what are we supposed to think? That he was bitten by a radioactive scorpion the same day as Pete got bit by a fucking spider? Also, he's completely insane. His voice is in his head, and he's stuck in this suit that makes him look like a major supervillain. And after saying all of this, Spider-Man's immediate response is to risk his life protecting him against an endless barrage of robot spiders. This part of the game is
Dog shit.
with how terrible the controls are. Having to keep track of this fucking guy while he flies around the map and fight off loads of robots who can blast you with lasers, chuck explosives at you, and also zip across the map is the kind of stuff that will put you in a one-way ticket to a padded cell. And to be perfectly honest with you, after trying and failing to beat this section for a good few hours and realizing I could have been applying for jobs in that time, I used a cheat code to skip the level. I know. My opinion on a children's license game from 2003 is no longer impervious, but it had to be done, okay? This game fucking reeks. After helping Scorpion by beating the shit out of him, he makes a daring escape.
Scorpion? Disappeared.
Meanwhile, Osborn, after being fired, uses his serum on himself, bringing the game back in line with the movie after its little episodes. For about 5 seconds. Now we reach the classic reveal of the Goblin during the parade. We save Mary Jane, save the city, and beat the shit out of the Goblin, who just loves to fly right into you and pelt you non-stop with nuclear warheads, which is totally fair and not bullshit in any way. Then you get a lovely section where you have to disarm bombs under a time limit, who also pelt you with gunfire, electricity, and explosions, and tank the frame rate to near unplayable levels. At this point, the game doesn't even know the meaning of the words balanced or fair, as almost every enemy you have the misfortune of fighting has the ability to shoot you with such heavy artillery at such a rapid pace that you're fucked and get sent all the way back to the beginning of whatever mission you were on, and it only gets worse from there. After saving the city, Spidey decides to break into Oscorp to discover the secrets of the Goblin, and there's a terrible stealth section. The stealth mechanics are basically the same as Family Guy the game, but if Brian could crawl on the ceiling. After stealthing, things get really Black Mesa really fast with this thing that you can use to destroy the fabric of reality.
Oh no! What have you done? We're doomed!
Then things get really Evangelion. In a section that is so crammed full of bombs, bullets, and a giant instant kill laser that it's just miserable. The further you get into this game, the more you realize it has nothing but misery to give you. It's such a shame because everything was lined up for this game to be really fun. The original cast returning, the plot of the original movie giving several set pieces which could make great levels, and yet after a promising start, it just nosedives off a cliff and never recovers. I don't know how this game is so well liked. It gets nothing but praise, almost as much as Spider-Man 2, but it's dog water. It's so bad. I'm not lying when I say this is one of the unhappiest gaming experiences I've had in a very, very long time. And I played Sonic Forces. After this, the game just doesn't improve. The final fight in like the graveyard or whatever is combined into the bridge sequence, and the game ends on a massive wet fart. Norman Osborn dies, and Peter and MJ make out while he's still wearing his mask in front of his corpse.
Yeah, that's my life.
Not a very good start to the trilogy, but if you've heard me ever ramble before, and if you know anything about movie licensed games and the reputations they have, things are about to improve drastically. Spider-Man 2, developed by the same team and released in 2004, is something of a miracle. Upon booting up the game, it's immediately apparent just by moving around the camera before the tutorial kicks in, which is voiced by Bruce Campbell in all of the games, that this game is going to be a huge improvement over the last. Oh my god. Oh, that was amazing. In Spider-Man 1, you spend the first hour running around in dimly lit rooms fighting mooks and wondering where you went wrong in life. In Spider-Man 2, bam, you're swinging around in the first 20 seconds and it's so good. The movement is fast, snappy, you no longer attach yourself to the moon and float towards your goal, you swing. Everything is so much more responsive, and I never really realized until playing something that was truly outdated just how modern this game feels. If it wasn't for the graphics, you could easily convince me that this game was put out 2 generations ahead of the one it was made for. The movement and the camera controls are natural, and I mean, just compare the combat. If you thought the fighting in Spider-Man 1 was goofy, Spider-Man 2 gives you this. No joke, you can be fucking brutal in this game.
Get to the car! Get those guys.
You have the entirety of New York at your fingertips. There's side missions, extras, loads of characters to interact with, and you can even spend hero points, which you earn by doing heroic deeds, on upgrades for Spidey's different abilities. This game is one skill tree away from being released last week. It's not all perfect, they didn't get J.K. Simmons, and for some reason they've replaced Harry with Jackie Jr. from The Sopranos.
Still palling around with that bug?
The camera tends to struggle to keep up with you if you go really fast, and while the controls are responsive, the momentum does take some getting used to.
It's like trying to wrangle a gator. It's tough, but when you get it,
The plot does a similar thing to the first movie game, but in a far less egregious way. Starting out, it's the same as the movie, although with the occasional distraction like Black Cat, who exists to just kind of run around while Spidey follows along in a dazed fury, and Rhino, who instead of having a giant, drawn-out section, gets the shit kicked out of him immediately and the game moves on. After this, you settle into a pretty comfortable gameplay loop. The game works in chapters, each one giving you a to-do list, which is usually do a mission which forwards the plot, buy an upgrade, and earn hero points by helping out the city. This actually does a pretty good job of representing the daily routine of someone like the web-slinging gremlin would be. Even when the story beats are inconsequential cutscenes copying the movie, you still have plenty of swinging around and people to beat to death. It does get a bit repetitive after a while. There's only so many balloons you can rescue, cars you can punch, and gangs of mooks who can ambush you before it all starts to rot your brain. But because the simple act of movement is so satisfying, it doesn't sting as bad as some gameplay loops. Plus, if you're getting sick of that, there are other things to do. This game is open world, so exploration is rewarded. It's obviously nowhere near as in-depth as something like Breath of the Wild or this weird game that I can't quite pronounce, but for a movie license game for the PS2, the amount of stuff to do that's actually fun is staggering. Also, the addition of non-movie characters into the plot is handled so much better than the first game. In the opening parts of Spider-Man 2, one of the main things that the story is beating into your brain is just how difficult balancing being Spider-Man and Peter Parker has gotten. Peter is late to everything and pushing everyone away because doing this and this is just too much at the same time. And the game adds on to this. You're late to everything in this game because every time you're about to see MJ or get to Dr. Connor's class, some fucker like Quentin Blake shows up and tries to prove Spider-Man is a fake by making you throw prison inmates into a big hole and crawl around like me when it's 3 AM and I want a little late night snack.
Did somebody say snack?
For today's snack time, me and my boyfriend decided to go to the Pizza Hut buffet as Pizza Hut is shutting down all of their locations in the UK and it's making me sad.
Pizza time.
We're going to Pizza Hut because Pizza Hut is dead. We're gonna have a little contest, we're gonna have a little competition. Whoever eats the most pizza wins. There it is. Pizza Hut. Wow.
Pizza time.
I'm on my 8th slice. Don't have visions. I can see the future. I taste blood. Slice number 9.
Number 9.
After trying and failing to defeat my 11th slice, I have dubbed boyfriend.
See, having all of this additional video gamey stuff can work when it helps to add to the story, instead of just taking the player aside and saying, hey, we don't have enough levels for the game and it's not long enough yet, so here's Scorpion, remember him? Fight these robots for 2 hours. Some of it does still come off as like padding for time, but it's far less egregious and it's actually fun, so it can get away with it. The game does a really good job, given the limited hardware it's running on, of making New York feel like a city people would actually live in. You can go into stores, buy stuff, and contribute to the economy with one of the finest side modes to ever grace a video game. the pizza delivery minigame. Yeah, if there's anything this game is known for, it's the mode where you gotta deliver pizzas to the hungry horde. Get everything delivered in the time limit, and don't you dare flip the pizzas, or Mr. Aziz will flip out. The song that plays while you do this has gone on to live a life of its own in internet infamy, and for good reason. The kind of chaos it breeds as you lose control of your momentum and flip pizza everywhere really is something special. It's enough to give any good man a hernia. After defeating Blake in his own game of Throw Man into Hole, he gets so pissed off that he snaps completely and turns into a Sigma male who hides himself away and re-emerges after saving 57 more balloons as Mysterio. Oh, sorry, I misspoke. I meant to say domestic terrorist who lures Spider-Man into a theater filled with a whole pack of robots, burns it down while claiming to be an alien, tries remodeling the Statue of Liberty after himself with a giant robot brain, which you promptly destroy with your and then lures you into his apartment, which is actually a giant demonic funhouse with killer clown punching bags and a room full of mirrors which create fucked up clones of you. Not questioning any of this, Spidey swiftly beats the homunculi to death before discovering Mysterio was never even there. I really like this part of the game. It comes completely out of left field and it's a nice stylistic change-up. The 50s B-movie music that plays while you swing across to the Statue of Liberty is really fun, although there's no music while you're in the funhouse, so it honestly does get a bit eerie just hearing the same weird chopped up Tobey Maguire voice lines in complete silence.
Not. This may sting a little.
Then we finally come up to the moment that Dr. Octavius becomes the infamous Dr. Squiddy in a segment that should be infuriating. There's this giant electric sphere of doom that's rapidly expanding at random and can kill you instantly, and you need to maneuver around it with pinpoint precision, so it's bullshit. But the ragdoll physics are so funny that I'll let it off the hook for now.
Wait, power terminal. Those plasma blasts are really dangerous.
Jumping ahead, we get to the bank robbery fight, where we're introduced to a new kind of mook who can just straight up fucking impale you and pelt you with explosives.
I'm starting to get flashbacks.
These guys actually start showing up in the overworld after this, alongside Mysterio's robots, which is cool. It helps slightly alleviate the repetitiveness of the hero points farming, but it's still pretty boring, you know, unless something like this happens.
1G.
But, you know, that would never happen. Back to the bank fight. After Otto takes out Aunt May, like in the movie, the game mashes two famous scenes together by having Otto put Aunt May on the train tracks and fucking off. I don't know why, I just find that bit really funny. You save her, and then we get a little break from the plot progression, because guess who's back? Everyone's favorite! Shocker! Shocker shows up, gets a way better boss fight than his last one, you cave his skull in, and you move on. You see, that's how it's done. If you're gonna give me padding, the least you can do is make it fast and fun. Hero point farm for about 3 hours, and then it's time for the final ultimate showdown with Mysterio, who's robbing a convenience store. Alright, here we go. The fight to end all fights. Here we go!
Spidey! You the man!
That ain't so
Yeah, that was it. That was the best climax to a villain in any Spider-Man game. Spider-Man 2 walked so that Across the Spider-Verse could run. After this, as Peter becomes more and more estranged from MJ and she gets engaged, Pete starts this weird on-again, off-again thing with Black Cat. It was her who initially led you to Shocker, and after she leads you to him again, you pretty much spend the next couple chapters chasing her around while she fucks with you. Only for it to go too far, because she's trying to get you to loosen up by beating people to death. But that's what I already spent all day doing anyway. No thank you. So, Pete tries to patch things up with MJ, and we're back on track with the movie. And it's time for the train scene, but we already had... Oh, fuck, I guess the game just really likes trains. Get in a fight with Doc Ock, lose, get kidnapped, and then taken to Jackie Jr., where he finds out Peter is Spider-Man. In a recreation of the scene from the film that definitely keeps all the emotional beats intact.
How can you be Spider-Man? Spider-Man killed my dad. We'll talk later, Harry. I promise.
Then it all comes to a head. You track down where Otto has been keeping his baby son, and your identity is revealed after getting punched in the face. Now there's nothing left to do but destroy the reactor, which is creating a big force field with machines that changes... Oh, for fuck's sake! Nah, I'm just kidding. It's nowhere near as annoying as the last one, as the force field moves nowhere near as often, allowing you to actually make progress without it feeling like complete bullshit. Then it's time to fight Dr. Octopus in a fight that is pretty fun and difficult. Otto can beat the shit out of you if you're not careful, and the amount of dodging you have to do is pretty insane at certain points, and if you're not lucky, he can just trap you and smack you into oblivion. But if you've made it this far, you can beat him. Once you beat Otto, he goes down with his creation. Peter and MJ patch things up, and that's Spider-Man 2. Now, there are more chapters of the game after you see the credits, but seeing as you need this many hero points to progress, I think I'll pass. We have a whole other game to be disappointed by. Spider-Man 2 is a great game. It just about perfectly captures what makes a lot of titles from this era worth going back to. It's a great representation of AA gaming, a design philosophy which just doesn't really get enough representation these days. It was made by a small team who just wanted to make something fun out of source material they had a love and understanding for. Not something made by a team of 200 desperately crunching so they can see their families, or just two guys in a basement. If you have the means of playing it, you should definitely give it a try. Spider-Man 3. So, this is an interesting one. On the main consoles, if you play any version of Spider-Man 1 and 2, you're going to get the same game. With the third one, this isn't the case. With Spider-Man 3, the franchise jumped to the HD generation, while also staying on the old one, so you've got two different versions of the game. For this video, I'm going to try and play the Wii version, which is in the same vein as the PS2 one, because fuck paying that. There's numerous little changes to the graphics and all that shit, but the main thing in the Wii version is that it has motion controls. Everything you do in this game is down to motion controls. Combat, combos, swinging, quick time events, dodging, camera control is based on motion. Let me repeat that. Camera control is determined by motion. And this isn't, ooh, isn't that quirky gyro aim, haha, like Splatoon or something. This is 2007 Nintendo Wii game motion. So basically, every combat encounter in the game amounts to this. And the swinging, it's so fucking bad. It's ludicrous. The momentum from the last game, that's gone. Now you're essentially a hamster in a sock being flung around by a hyperactive teenager, and it's baffling how this was ever exciting new technology. Everything about this game is just so much jankier than even Spider-Man 1. I spent ages bitching about how that game was so old and archaic, but just look at this one.
I think I made my point.
Okay, how long actually is this game? Oh, fuck that. No, I'm not. Marker. Spider-Man 3 has got to be one of the weirdest games I've ever played. It's insanely ambitious, and it tries as hard as it can to take every mechanic from Spider-Man 2 and expand on it, but in doing this, it ends up just being incredibly confused and muddled. Let's start with the actual controls, now that this has been rightfully cast to the flames. The swinging is in theory the same as Spider-Man 2. The controls are the same, but the weight is just so strange. Spidey feels like a big sack of meat flopping around aimlessly, and it's just so much slower. Journeys that would be a fun blitz in the last game are a total slog here, and wall crawling is just completely broken in a lot of cases. The combat is another attempt to recreate and expand. You have the same basic attacks as Spider-Man 2, but the weight and collisions are just off. I'm not really sure how to explain it. Most enemies that you face are pathetically weak, and the AI is about as intelligent as a newborn weevil, so the combat becomes pretty boring pretty quick. This extends to boss battles, with most being so intensely low IQ that they'll just stand there while you wail on them until they die, occasionally doing like a slow attack that you need to dodge or something. The combat and traversal just feels so much emptier than the last game. Just compare to car punching. All of the new mechanics introduced reek of early Xbox 360 title. If Spider-Man 2 represents what made the 6th generation so great, Spider-Man 3 does that for all the things we hate about the 7th. There's quick time events, Spidey can use what is essentially detective vision from the Arkham games if it was heavily watered down, there's numerous Bioshock style mini puzzles, it's all here and accounted for. Every attempt that the game makes to come off as new and modern just in 2023 comes off as what it probably was. Shit getting thrown at the wall to see what sticks. Now, I don't want to be entirely negative. There are some changes that I really quite like. The progression system has been completely overhauled. We're still in an open world New York, but now the game takes on a far less linear approach. The different non-movie character missions are split into parts and scattered all across the map, letting you tackle them in any order you want and at your own pace. I really like this. It's a nice change up from the last game and causes this game to actually feel different instead of just being Spider-Man 2 but lame. We have the Lizard, who's up to his usual make a bunch of lizard shtick, but he's also being hunted by Kraven. Scorpion is here and being forced to carry out the wills of the evil doctor from the first game. You know, there was an evil doctor in the first game. Rhino is here after being saved by Scorpion, with Spidey eventually teaming up with Scorpion to take him down. The crime fighting aspects have also been reworked. Now, instead of just being the same 5 random events from faceless mooks with no leader, the city is being ravaged by specific gangs with specific goals. You've got the Waste Tribe, the Dragon Tails, H-Bombers, and Apocalypse, all with their own series of missions and side plots. At certain points, it really does manage to pull off the sense that you're taking down a ring of organized crime, as Spidey teams up with definitely not Commissioner Gordon and systematically takes down the gang's operations. Individual crimes are just far more in-depth than before. You can track an ongoing robbery or whatever and intercept it before the police can. It's still nothing as well thought out as, say, the Arkham games, but as an evolution of the last game, I'd say it's a good step to take. There's also the most interesting new style of mission, the Mary Jane thrill rides. In these, you grab Mary Jane and swing her around the city to earn her love points, while she demands you swing in different ways, like high up or down low, and goddamn is she demanding.
Swing up real high! I want to go even higher! Stay as high up as you can! I want to go even higher! Swing really close to the ground! Swing up real high!
This game really isn't helping the case for Mary Jane and the Raimi trilogy. And then there's the graphics. Can we please talk about the graphics? I've been dying to talk about the graphics all day. This game doesn't look real. It looks like a fake game that you see in an episode of a TV show from 2009. There's no lighting, no depth to anything. The characters look like they came straight out of a claymation from the 1980s, and the animation is one of two things: horrible god-awful motion capture or an SFM animation from 2012. And I love it. I don't know how they did it, but they somehow managed to make a game that looks nothing like anything I've ever seen before. It's like a food fight and Grand Theft Auto were pushed into the teleporter from The Fly and merged into an unholy abomination. It's pretty much the only thing this game is ever remembered for. Gone are the days of characters looking nothing like their actors. Homunculi are in, and they are disgusting. All of the faces are accounted for here. Toby, Franco, Kirsten, Simmons, and they all look delightfully horrible. It's a perfect product of its time. Only the very beginning of the HD generation has the specific growing pains to allow for a game to look like this. I mean, there were many ugly games that came out in the years that follow, but nothing has ever or will ever look ugly in the same way as Spider-Man 3 the game again. It's hideous, it barely runs, it's buggy as hell, it introduces non-linear forms of progression. This is Pokemon Scarlet. After going through the first wave of missions, we're introduced to the thing that ruined the film for many, the black suit. What this entails is the combat is now angrier, combos are more violent, Peter's more of a whiny bitch, and you have rage mode, which makes you deal more damage. And that's it. When it comes down to it, I don't know, this game just must have been horribly rushed. While it has a lot of annoying cliches of games from that era, it also comes off as pretty endearing. This doesn't feel like a cash grab, it feels like Spider-Man 2. The team seems to have been trying just as hard as they were before to make a fun game first and a licensed product second. But whether it be too tight of a deadline or getting too ambitious with what was at the time new hardware, it just struggles too much to be as consistently enjoyable as the game that came before it. For every time it genuinely impresses you, it also trips on its own shoelaces and smashes its face in the ground. I tried really hard to find any kind of proof of troubled development or anything, but besides this one interview that reads like a robot being told to write the most favourable description ever, there's nothing. Who knows, maybe I'm just being overly optimistic and this game was just shat out to meet a deadline, but with how much it expands on the last game, I don't know if that's the case. We know what happens next. The game continues loosely adapting the plot of the film with some questionable delivery.
Nothing that's stopping your gums from flapping wouldn't solve.
Penny!
Daddy, I'm scared. Help me.
Isn't this sweet?
Venom's introduced, gets the funniest death ever.
Did I do that?
With New Goblin's death being a close contender.
That's actually how he dies. He's never seen again.
It's janky as shit, and the game ends.
Spider-Man.
Wow. Would I recommend Spider-Man 3? If you're into this kind of thing, you know, exploring old forgotten software, then definitely, yeah. I wouldn't say it's a must-play that everyone should experience. I'm not even saying you should finish it if you do decide to play it, but with just how easy it is to get a copy of the PC version running on modern computers, it's definitely worth exploring as a fascinating time capsule of how game development used to be. In a way, it's almost kind of bittersweet to experience this story that I've consumed 1,000,000 times as a kid in a completely different medium. It's kind of like seeing an amateur stage adaptation. There's no way you could ever take it seriously or consider it a replacement for the source material, but seeing a project come to life despite it being held together with spit and toothpicks is really fun to watch unfold. And not to mention it's really fun. I think that wraps everything up. The Raimi Spider-Man trilogy in game form is far more of a rollercoaster of quality than the films they're based on. They all have different quirks which are endlessly interesting, and even if the games gave me a lot of grief and no end of things to bitch about, it was a lot of fun to explore a side of this version of the character that I hadn't seen before. Overall, play Spider-Man 2. 3 is optional, don't bother with 1. Why is the video still going? I just thought I'd throw this in for shits and giggles. Spider-Man 4, the Raimi film that never saw the light of day, the eternal mystery and potential redemption for the series that we never got, was also going to get a video game. This was a quirky little odyssey for a while, considered lost media that nobody would ever get to touch, until one day it got leaked. Twice. A build for the Wii game got spat out online in 2019 along with loads of screenshots of what the game might have been, then 2 years later an Xbox 360 version was also found. The game would have done exactly what all the others did, loosely following the plot of the film while also giving us side missions in an open world New York, and considering how early on in development it was, this game looks nice. Apparently elements from it like the map were reused in Prototype 2, as the game was being developed by Radical Entertainment. That's right, the Brett Ho Hockey 95 people! And we said they were crazy. The build of the Wii version is readily available to download online, and while it's definitely interesting to explore, seeing that all this potential wasn't completely wasted is really nice, if you want an actual game, I wouldn't say it's worth unburying. There's not exactly some story you can finish. The Xbox 360 version looked far more promising and far along, with the environment looking way more polished than Spider-Man 3, even in this unfinished state. There's a lot going on here. Fully laid out UI and a map system. This wasn't just some concept that never left the cutting room floor. This had some backbone to it. You can even beat the shit out of a helicopter. But alas, after the reception to both the film and game of Spider-Man 3 was, let's say, less than favorable, Sam Raimi essentially obtained survivor's guilt like he was on the fucking Titanic, and everything Spider-Man 4 related was canned. 2 reboots, the development and syncing of an entire cinematic universe later, and here we are. Sam's only just starting to get comfortable around capes again, and Spider-Man 4 remains as a reminder of how things used to be. Before we had games and films that acted as services, and even when the most soulless of cash grabs could have a couple people hidden in them trying to make stuff that was actually entertaining. You didn't fail us, Sam. You were just dealt a bad hand.
Spider-Man 4 is never coming out. The company had a shred of a doubt. Tobey Maguire is just too old to sell those tickets anymore. The suit's in a closet, never to be seen. The script's in a trash can, no pad or a dream. The cameras aren't rolling, no actors to force. Toby and Willem, just like your parents' divorce. Just like your parents' divorce.
Spider-Man 4 is never coming out. Spider-Man 4 is never coming out. Spider-Man 4, we've been here before. Spider-Man 4 is never coming out. Spider-Man 4 is never coming out. Spider-Man 4, we've been here before.
Hey, but what about Spider-Man PS4? That was really good, and Spider-Man 2 looks like it's gonna be fucking incredible and way better than if it had to be tied to some dumb movie.
Yeah, that's true. But I have an Xbox, so those games aren't real. They don't exist. Bye-bye!
I'm going to die!
Another day, my head.